Welcome to CSSBattle, a new challenge. This is the third challenge on the Battle 1 of many to come. This is called Push Button, and what we're going to do is, in this very short tutorial, we're going to try to basically replicate this design using HTML and CSS on the left here. And of course this is the output, so currently it looks like this, and we can compare it against uh, this one. So our goal is to try to basically replicate this. Before I get started, I just want to kind of quickly maybe go through how to how to really kind of tackle these things in the first place, because a lot of the times I think it's very difficult to just jump right in, because you don't really know where to start. So before I even start coding anything, I just want to kind of talk about this design and how we may want to handle this. Um, so one quick thing we might notice is that we have a square-like shape here, a rectangular-like shape going on here. And we have this, but there's some parts missing, so it's kind of weird. But if you think about it, this is sort of like a circle, right, in a sense. If you think about this, is like a big circle that's sort of coming on top or sitting right on top of that rectangle. This is why that the outer rectangle is sort of cut off, because it's sort of overlapping on top of each other. So we have the rectangular shape here, and then after that we have a circle. And if you think about it, there's another circle here, and of course another circle inside that. So one thing that we know is that we might want to use something called z-index to basically make sure everyone is, or each shape is sort of sitting on top of each other, to make this whole UI to reality, basically. So what we can do is we can just start with this rectangular, right? And one thing we can notice is, of course, we have this background color. And if you think about it, it looks like this rectangular shape is centered vertically and horizontally. So let's just try to do that. But even before that, let's just try to make sure that we have this outer container going. So for these challenges, what I tend to do is I just like to start from scratch and delete everything. So we have nothing here. So the first thing I'm going to do is make this outer shape, this container. Right now it says it has a 400 by pixels by 300 pixels dimensions, but generally I like to think of these designs as the whole window view width. So one thing we could use is, let's just quickly go ahead and make the div element itself, right? So this is the main container. It's called div, and we're going to give this a class. Oh, nice. There's some nice auto completion going on here, which is great. I'm just going to give this a class of container here, and inside here I can also, of course, use CSS here. So I think I can add a style tag here. I believe that's how it was. Let me quickly see here. Yeah, so there's a style tag there. Okay, so I'll get rid of everything here. And of course we have this div here, and we have style tags. I'm gonna get rid of any styles that we have by default, and give this a div, a class of container. And of course I'm giving it a class because I want to basically select this to add more styles to it inside here. So how do I choose how do I target a class? I just use a dot syntax here, and dot container. And what I can do is I can say the width of this container is 100 pixels, or rather 100 view width, which means basically just take the entire width of your current window. And of course, I'm going to do the same thing for our height as well. And of course, the background color for this container is this. So I'm going to quickly copy it by clicking on it, and I'm going to say a background color of this. Cool. So far so good, except we have some margin styling issues, or I guess padding. I don't really know what's going on here. It's basically, I think there's some browser default styles being set right now. So what I tend to do generally for these challenges is that I tend to target every element that we have here. I like to give it a padding, padding of 0, and a margin of 0. And as you can see, that basically solved this problem. And I also tend to do is I like to add box, I want to say border box. Was it box sizing? I think it's box sizing instead of border box as well. Great. So we're good so far. We're good with the container. Let's try to make this rectangular shape next. So because this rectangular shape is sitting right inside the container, it makes sense that I create another div that is inside this container. Great, so I'm going to name this, let's say, rectangle. This is the only rectangle, so I'm going to just keep it a rect here. And of course, again, I'm going to target this by class name. And I don't really know what the width and height is, but let's just say, I want to say maybe, if this whole thing is 400 pixels, maybe 300 pixels, 350 maybe. Let's give 350 and a height of probably half of it, so 150. So 150 is the height there, and of course we have to give it a border, a background style of this color. So I'm going to give it a background of this color there. And as you can see, it's here, but it's not in the middle. So how do we center something? That's one of the very common questions, or that usually are asked in an interview, or something you should probably know as a developer. How do we center something inside a box, right? That's really the most common questions being asked on interviews, or just to know in general. So what we can do is we can use two different techniques. In this case, I'm just going to use something called flexbox. So we have this container here, and I'm going to give this a display of flex, and I want to add something called justify content. And I want to center this horizontally. Right there, as you can see, it kind of moved to the center horizontally. And if I want to vertically center it, I give it a align items of center. Cool, so far so good, but it looks like maybe I got the width wrong, so I'm going to give it a maybe 300 maybe. Look at that, perfect, great. So we got the rectangle, all good. Now, one problem that we might have is that because we use display flex, it's going to be hard to sort of center this item, center its children item basically. So this could be a problem, but let's give it a shot. Let's just say we have another item sitting right inside the rectangle, which is this bigger circle here, right? And of course, this one has the same color as the container, so we can just, that's why it almost feels like there's a huge gap here, but it's really just another circle sitting there, but with a transparent background, or the same background color as the container. So let's go ahead and create this circle here, basically this outer circle that's going on here, and we'll give it the same background color as the container. So we're going to come back to our HTML here, and we're going to give this a div, create another div inside it, and we're going to say this one is a circle, but let's be a little bit more specific here. I'm going to say the outer circle, or let's just say large circle, right? Well, there's three different circles. There's a bigger one. Let's just say, I don't know, let's say, yeah, we'll just call this, maybe this one is a large circle, this one is a medium circle, this is a small circle or something. So we're going to say circle is large, and I don't know, I'm getting an error here. Oh, that's just Grammarly, ignore that. Okay, so I'm going to target that class now, and I'm going to give it a width of, I think this was 300 pixels, so maybe 275, maybe, I don't know, we'll verify that. And of course this is circle, so it must have the same height and width, 275 pixels, and I'm going to give it a background of this container here. So I'm going to copy the color here, And just like, whoa, what happened there? What happened was we need to basically make sure that it is centered horizontally, because again, it is sitting inside this container here. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe give it a different background just so we can see exactly what's going on. I'll give it a red background. As you can see, now you can actually really see it. The problem we might run into, yeah, I'm thinking a little ahead, but that's fine. Okay, we'll give it a background of green. Red is like just too red. Anyway, so cool. Now we need to center it. If we want to center this, we need to come back to our the parent container for this, which is the rectangular. And I'm going to give this a display flex, and I can justify content center and excuse me, and items center as well. Sorry, align items rather. Cool. Now it is centered, looking good. Now we need to make sure that this one is circle. How do we do that? We add we add a border radius of 50%. Oops, not to the rectangular. Rather, we want to add this to the circle. So let's give it a border radius of 50%. Awesome. It looks like maybe I got the width wrong here as well, because you can see the circle sort of, maybe we want to make it slightly smaller. Maybe 250 probably makes the most sense, perhaps. Sweet. Great. Now let's go ahead and change the background real quick. So we have the original. And there we have it. So far, so good. Now, all we really need to do is make the other two. So again, it's the same pattern, right? We have the rectangular, and inside the rectangle we have another circle. And now, if we want to make this circle, we have to make another div that is sitting right inside and is vertically and horizontally centered. So how do we do that? Well, let's go to the HTML here. I'm going to add another div. I'm going to call this circle, circle medium. And while we're here, let's just go ahead and make the smaller circle as well. Give it another div, and that's probably going to be our last circle, or any other shape to come really. So we'll give this one a class of circle small. Great. So same idea. In fact, I'm going to just go ahead and copy over a lot of these things. So I'm going to give the same styling to the medium circle. What happened there? Okay. To the medium circle. And of course the width is a little bit smaller, so maybe it's 150, I want to say. I could be wrong. We can always, of course, change that. And this one has a background of this color, so I'm going to go ahead and change that. As you can see, it's a little bit out of place because it's not centered horizontally or vertically. So again, to make this centered to the child, we need to make this one have the display flex. So I'm going to go ahead and copy over the logic to center items vertically and horizontally. And there we have it. Look at that. We got the perfect width and height going on as well. And let's go ahead and do the last part, which is create, or I guess write CSS for the smaller circle. This one has, I think this was probably 50 pixels, I'm going to assume, of height and width. Still circles, have a border radius, and we're going to give this a background color of this, and of course we need to center it. Let's go ahead and copy this logic here over to the parent container, and there we have it. There's all the CSS that we need to make this look like this, and we can quickly check that. As you can see, if you click on the diff here, it basically shows if there's any mismatches. In this case, it's a blank screen because everything basically matches exactly how we want the shape to look like. All right, I think we've covered this one. Let's go ahead and submit this real quick. And we have a 100% match. Great. That will cover it for this video. So this is the HTML. This is the CSS bit for push button battle 1.